Welcome to IB Nation Sports Talk. We are up and rolling once again. It's Mailbag night. He's Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. It's a crappy day outside, so hopefully our YouTube viewers get us going here pretty soon.
Hopefully sooner than later, because I'm normally very impressed by the excitement level of the guys in the chat, the conversation that goes on.
I know. We should have just saved all the Drew Pine questions for tonight. But, people had a million Drew Pine questions last night. But, well, we are here. We are here to take your questions because it is Mailbag night. So shoot them at us. Don't be afraid. Bring them on. We will, we will talk about it. Yep. Stymie. That's right. Eddie Rabbit. I love a rainy night. That's what it is. That's what it is. Vince's son is down in Goshen playing a little sectional, or is it regional?
Regional semifinals, yeah.
Regional semifinal soccer tonight because they already won a sectional championship.
Yep. Right. In the rain, in the pouring rain. So good luck. I have chosen to be here with the people as opposed to being there with those people. So I have my soccer pullover. So I'm rooting for them. I'm pulling for them, but I'm also dry, which is not the case with all the people that are there right now. So
I had a follow-up appointment, my 6-week follow-up with my cardiologist after my whole thing.
Oh yeah.
6 weeks ago, obviously, my little pacemaker up here. And he's the one, I don't know if you remember, but I talked about it when I came back about the fact that, as he's doing the procedure, I'm kind of regaining consciousness and he's still like suturing and, closing me up and all that stuff. And we seem to be in the middle of a conversation about Notre Dame football. And we were talking about, the history of the coaches, Bob Davie, Tyrone Willingham, Charlie Weiss, who deserved to go, who, maybe should have stayed longer, that kind of stuff. So I saw him today. And he said, "Yeah, I watched your podcast. You were talking about me."
That is hilarious.
Shout out again to Dr. Turk over there at St. Joe Regional.
Literally keeping you alive. So we appreciate Dr. Turk.
Yeah. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. So, yes, we had that. I watched Quantum Leap last night, so we can talk about that here in a little bit. I forgot. I should have just added that to the rapid fire. I forgot to add that to rapid fire.
Okay.
We can stick it in there. We can stick it in anywhere.
Yeah,
so,
no doubt. We can call it audible on that one because I do have some questions for you about your thoughts on that particular episode and kind of how things are progressing.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, smash that like button if you would. Now that more people are climbing in tonight and we are getting more questions coming in
we are
as well. Much appreciated for that. Like button, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let's just jump in here. I'll start scrolling through, and
I'll stay at the bottom and keep starring. And
I'll tell you what. Brian had the first question. He was one of the first ones in. Brian J. Irish. So we will take his question first, and he says, "Will Tobias get one catch against Stanford? I'm certainly hoping for more catches, but we don't want to overdo it."
I'm gonna go with yes. I think he will get his first catch against Stanford because we have in the last 2 games seen a progressive increase in reps. And this past game, he was actually on the field when the ball was thrown, which is a increase from what we saw before. And Stanford is not very good. And so I would hope that he would get a catch. And maybe, just maybe, that catch will come from Steve Angeli. I'll even throw that in there.
That would be very interesting. This should be a lopsided game. This is not a good Stanford team. I did the interview with the Stanford guy today. We'll have that on tomorrow's show. They're just not good. And, they're giving up almost 211 rushing yards per game. This should be a game. Their secondary is decent. So, and
sure,
their offense, quarterback can throw it a little bit too. I'm curious to see what they're able to do because the offensive line is not that good. They basically have one running back. What I'm alluding to is the fact that this should be a lopsided game, and hopefully by the fourth quarter, maybe some guys like you're saying, Angeli, Merriweather, maybe they all get out there. I don't know. I don't know if I want to quite rush to that. I'll say yeah, he gets a catch because again, it's at least he's seeing the field. He's seen the field in 2 out of the last 3 games now. So that's a start. And I'll say that he does, even though, again, like you look at overall wide receiver production, and we've got a Tobias angled question coming up that'll lead off rapid fire tonight as well. I'll say he gets a catch though. What the heck?
Yeah, why not? It would fit the pattern. It would be great. I think that's the next step. And somebody said, how about just a target? Okay, I'll take that too.
Take that as well.
I feel like, if he does get the ball thrown in his direction, it'll be a fairly easy throw. And so it should be an easy catch.
Yeah.
So that's why I said catch.
Along the lines of receivers, Paul says, how long do you think it'll take for Notre Dame to get world-class wide receivers and use them?
Well, they've gotten good wide receivers. They just haven't used them. So I can't world-class. I mean, they got a top 20 receiver in Tobias Merriweather. They just haven't used him yet. So, they're getting guys. They're just not utilizing them yet. And so how long do I think it'll take? Might take a change in offensive coordinator, to be honest with you, and or a change in his philosophy, like a massive change in his philosophy. But until that happens, it's not going to be until there's a different guy calling the shots.
Now, at the same time, to be fair, as we've talked about, they're receivers to throw to. Drew Pine isn't always seeing them and making those throws.
Fair enough.
He obviously made as we talked about yesterday, great throw to Jaden Thomas. Let him go get a 50-50 ball. Thomas made a play on it, turned it into a touchdown. We just like the fact that Braden Lindsey he's averaging less than 10 yards per catch right now. Yeah. It's inconceivable. A guy with Braden Lindsey's speed,
agreed.
That's what he's averaging per catch. And I'm not calling Braden Lindsey world class, but he's fast. He was going to go to Oregon to run track and play football. He's a fast guy, and that's a good track program. There's talent there. It's just a matter of utilizing it, and they've got to get to that point at some point.
Yep, absolutely agree.
All right. I'll just throw Stymie up there. I have no idea how practices are structured, but in an attempt to develop to screen plays, do they dedicate time during the season to work on wide receiver, tight end blocking?
Well, I don't know how they structure practice either because we're not there, but every team devotes time to blocking, especially the tight ends, because they actually work with the offensive line in blocking. So yes, they definitely do. And I know for a fact that when we were there, the wide receivers work on blocking. So yes, the answer is yes. Now, blocking specific to a screenplay, that's a little bit different, but they definitely block out time for blocking. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. And I remember like during again, during the season, we don't know because we're not there during the season. We don't get to see any of that. But during training camp, I distinctly remember plenty of times seeing tight ends pushing the blocking sled around and that kind of stuff. So know that. I'm trying to remember specific wide receiver blocking drills. Like, do you remember?
Not specifically. They did a lot of hands drills when we were there, But I mean, the short answer is yes. They always practice blocking, but based on the results on the field the first few games, I would say not enough. And then I would also say that based on what they've done kind of moving forward, they have gone back to it. That's what I would say based on the performance on Saturdays.
Right. All right. Any update on the live show on game day? I'm bringing my boy down for his first night game and would love to meet everybody.
Well, the live show we do is from here, just like we're doing it currently.
Right. And at 10 a.m. We always do it at 10 regardless of what time the game kicks off.
10 to noon every Saturday morning. No questions asked on that one. I don't know if Brian is planning on doing a tailgate or not. You'll have to ask in his show. I haven't talked to him about that, but if he is, they'll be out there, and he's generally out there to kind of tailgating a little bit too, checking everybody out and things like that. So I don't know if IB is hosting one or not, but as far as the show is concerned, you can tune in at 10 o'clock, or else the podcast will, of course, be up and ready to go shortly after the show ends. So you can check it out that way. But yeah, we're always at 10 a.m. no matter what.
Yes. Yes. Sorry, I'm sitting here looking. I'm scrolling through some of the questions we've got.
I will say, because I'm seeing a couple of questions trickle in. Sean and myself, we are not recruiting guys. And so some of the recruiting questions we're not going to be able to answer.
Yeah.
Like as far as who's going to be in town this weekend. I know it's a big recruiting weekend, that sort of a thing. Somebody asked if we still have a shot at Keon Keeley. I would say you've always got a shot till he signs something, but I don't know the details of that recruitment. I know that there's been some buzz about Jeremiah Love recently. I know he's going to be in town. So I know some of the periphery stuff. And then when I would do the shows during the week, I would have a little bit more knowledge because I would just literally sit there and listen to Ryan talk about it. But I don't do those shows anymore, so I'm not 100% sure on a lot of the recruiting stuff. So I know they did a recruiting show on Monday, and I believe they do like a mini mailbag every day too. So I would throw your questions in there as well. So I apologize, but that recruiting is not our beat. So we don't really have a whole lot of answers on the recruiting
Very
side
true.
of things.
Very true. Now, I saw this one. We'll go ahead and throw this one in here. Andrew, how many of the top 25 teams do you think Notre Dame would beat, no doubt, if they played their B game? And I'm assuming you're talking about the opponent playing their B game, not Notre Dame playing their B game.
I mean, why do they have to play their B game for Notre Dame to beat them? I mean, they just beat the 16th ranked team in the country, last Saturday. So, and I'm pretty sure BYU is still ranked. North Carolina is ranked, if I'm not mistaken, right? Are we talking the AP poll, Sean?
Well, that's a good question. I'm looking. I'm kind of counting right here, right now at the AP. North Carolina is ranked 25th.
Okay.
In the coaches, but not in the AP. Now I got to start my count over again.
Okay. All right. I mean, look, there's a lot of look. Do I think Notre Dame would beat James Madison? Yes. Do I think that there's a lot of teams on here that I think Notre Dame can beat. I don't know why we have to designate them having their B game. If teams are playing with their B game, then Notre Dame can beat most of them. If not, I won't say all, but they can beat most of them if they're all playing their B game. I will say that.
I mean, and like with their B game, that obviously changes everything. But like I'm looking at, just kind of scrolling through and looking at some of these teams, like the lower half of the top 25, like any given year, I'm fairly confident without their B game.
Right.
With most of them, like now Kansas is in there, and I like Kansas offense. Their defense is nothing to speak of, even though they've played better defensively the last couple of weeks. That could actually be an interesting game, I think, because I think I told you the other day, I really like the creativity that Kansas has with their offense. But I'm going through here, like Kansas State is ranked 17th right now. And basically the reason Kansas State is ranked 17th is because they beat a horrible Oklahoma team that was completely overrated when they played them.
Right.
So that's what that comes down to. And then they won just a ugly game 10-9 against Iowa State last week. Like 10-9. You talk about Iowa games being boring. But there are a lot of good offensive teams in this poll right now. Like TCU, UCLA, USC is really good this year. Tennessee, and I'm talking about offense. Tennessee, and then you start getting toward the top. So I'd say about half. That lower half, I'm pretty confident in just about any game that Notre Dame would play in with them, I think.
Okay, I like that. I'm texting with Brian right now, and he's telling me about this live in-person show that he's doing.
Oh, so there's a live show that we didn't know about.
Yes, he is.
So he's trying to keep us away from it.
Yeah, he's saying he's doing it from 3 to 3:30 on campus near the dome. Hasn't picked out a precise spot just yet. And he said people need to follow him on Twitter and sign up for the boards to get more details.
Okay.
So that's what I'm hearing about this for the first time, friends. So
he's going to do a live show from campus?
Apparently.
Interesting.
I I will talk to you about that later.
No, I know, because there are different rules and regs,
Yes.
regarding who can do what from campus and stuff like that. So
That
I'll
was
be curious to talk to you about that. All right.
all right.
Irish Chi-Town, plain and simple. Keys to victory against Stanford. My key: show up,
I was going to
don't
say
fall
the
asleep,
same thing.
and beyond that, don't play sloppy. Again, this is a team that's given up almost 211 rushing yards a game, and Notre Dame is coming off back-to-back 287 and 234 rushing days
Yep.
against North Carolina and BYU. And this team is ranked 121st in the nation. This is the worst run defense they're going to face this year. And they just got done running for over 500 yards in 2 games, against their last 2 opponents who have better run defenses. So this is not a good matchup for Stanford. Notre Dame should be able to have its way. They might give up some points because, again, Stanford, McKee can throw a little bit.
Sure.
But they don't run the ball particularly well. You can get to McKee, you can sack him, so, and they don't cause turnovers either. Neither one of these teams, Notre Dame is forced to, Stanford is forced to. That's something that they're both doing poorly. So it's not like you have to worry about a ball hawking defense by any means. So I don't know what else to add to that. I mean, this is just on paper a very lopsided matchup.
I agree with you. And I was going to say show up too, but then I think in the back of my head, Marshall. So really just showing up isn't going to do it. But they just need to continue doing what they're doing. They need to continue to get better on the offensive line. If they even take one step forward on the offensive line, they're going to gouge Stanford in the run game. And I'm not going to rehash everything that you said, but as long as they keep opening the playbook just a little bit for Drew Pine, I think he's going to continue to get better. I think the running game is going to continue to get better. I mean, yes, they need to show up, but they also need to continue to take that step forward that we've seen for the last few weeks. If they do that, this game is not going to be close. I mean, it's a double-digit spread right now. I think that's appropriate. I always get nervous when it's more than 2 touchdowns and it's kind of in that neighborhood, but at the same time, that's what should happen.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yes, they just need to show up and continue doing what they have been doing, and they'll be just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me keep scrolling here. Tyler's got a super chat, and he said he's a diehard Panthers fan. It's been a rough 3 years. Coach was fired. Matt Rule, of course, fired. 18 was fired. 18.
I'm not sure what the 18 is, but the rest of it makes sense.
Maybe that's a typo. Fired and a coach loses his job. But where do you think he will go next? I think Matt Rule. Maybe he was talking about, I think it's like $18 million maybe he's owed or something like that. If keep an eye and see if maybe
that's
Tyler
what it is.
Kind of chimes in again with the follow-up to this. Eric Bieniemy's still out there. He's the name that comes up every year, the Chiefs offensive coordinator. He's interviewed a lot. He has never got anything. You do have to start to wonder, with a guy like that, with all these interviews he's getting and he still hasn't been hired, is he, does he not interview particularly well,
Yeah.
But he's the first hot candidate I can think of. Other than that,
well, I think the OC down in Tampa.
Leftwich. Yeah, Byron Leftwich.
I think he's a pretty high candidate as well for head coaching jobs.
Even though, if you want to make the counterpoint to that, the fact that he's had Tom Brady for 3 years definitely helps him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the offensive coordinators that have gotten head coaching jobs that had Tom Brady at quarterback. A lot. And defensive coordinators for that matter as well. And it's funny how they all end up back in New England. But either way, I think Byron Leftwich is a candidate. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. The NFL is so flavor of the month, it feels like. Head coaches don't last very long. Let's just put it that way.
Here's an interesting one from Lucas. He says Cam Hart and Brandon Joseph have both been underwhelming considering the hype they've been receiving for their draft prospects. Quick question, would they benefit returning? Is it actually possible? I'll just say this. today, Brandon Joseph, they announced that he was named to the lot. He was like the lot impact player of the week. Like the Ronnie Lott Award gives out. Like a defensive impact player of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm really hard pressed for as much hype as this guy had. Now he's playing solid because when he's where he's supposed to be, things aren't going wrong. But like, for as great as he was supposed to be, like I struggle to think of the quote unquote impact type plays that I've seen him make so far.
Agreed. No, I completely agree. And with this question specifically, they would both benefit as of right now. I mean, look, Cam Hart has been fine. He's been fine. You know what I mean? He did not take the step that I thought he was going to take this year. And so if he thinks that he is a first round draft pick, he needs to come back. And now he's going to have opportunities.
Hold it. Say that again. You said if he thinks he's a first
if he thinks he will be a first round draft pick at some point, like if that's his
like
goal
in the future.
If that's his goal when he comes out to be a first round draft pick, I should have explained that better. Then he should come back, because as of right now, if he comes out this year, I don't think that's going to be the case.
Right.
And so now he's going to have opportunities in big games against Clemson and against USC, potentially to get some good film, and maybe that bumps him into the first round. But as of right now, I don't think that that's the case. So I do think he needs to come back. And Brandon Joseph, as you had mentioned, has not had a standout, amazing game. I thought he had a really good game against Ohio State. I think he has done a good job as a punt returner, but as a safety, he's not making Kyle Hamilton plays right now.
Yeah.
He's not laying guys out left and right. He's, maybe guys turn on the film and they see, coaches turn on the film and they see, a really good safety, that sort of a thing. And maybe he doesn't need to come back. I feel like he could benefit from another year at this point.
Well, and the thing with Cam Hart is I feel like if he came out based on the way he's played so far, he's probably in the Kevin Austin situation, completely overestimating his value, and it's not going to go well for him in the NFL draft, the way he's played so far. Not that he's like been horrible by any means. I'm not saying that, but obviously there have been enough plays where he hasn't played to the standard that he set last year, whereas you've got all these young guys around him who are playing just as well, if not better than him in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and he's getting outplayed by a freshman right now.
Exactly.
Everybody is, frankly. I mean, Benjamin Morris is outplaying everybody in the secondary. But, I mean, there are other guys kind of stealing the limelight right now. And, Kyle Hamilton had the limelight all to himself, even when he wasn't playing.
Right. And he does have a fifth year that he could come back because of the COVID year. So
right.
I think he would benefit from it. Now, the question becomes, like from a program standpoint, what would Notre Dame want out of that? Because you do have these younger guys who are, both two freshmen, obviously, who are playing right now. And you've got the recruiting at that position is on the upward trend. So what would Notre Dame want? Would he be a depth guy? What kind of playing situation would he have? You'll lose Tariq Bracy, so that there's going to be some other stuff there. But yeah. Quinn says he hates he's going to the Bears game Thursday. Whew, good luck with that. Hate the orange helmets. I don't disagree.
I mean, they're different. You've got all these teams going with like black or, these alternate colors. And so the Bears are trying to jump on the bandwagon. The problem is they can't really go black. It's too close to navy blue. It wouldn't look any different, right? And so really the only thing they can do, they can either go white, which I would have preferred, or they can go orange. Orange looks like a pumpkin, and it's not a great look, especially when they're whipping it out in October right before Halloween. Like, that doesn't help either. I would have preferred like icy white all the way down, just white out uniforms. I think that would look pretty sweet with a white helmet. I think that would look cool, but they didn't ask my opinion. So I agree with you, Quinn. The orange helmets are bad. I would have gone white.
Yeah. That's a good call. I'd like to see that. I think that that kind of icy white look that you're talking about looks really sharp, and like doing something like what the Bengals did with the white, basically the black and white helmets.
Yeah.
And, maybe like put some bear paws on there, or even like, that they obviously like that, Michigan looking thing as their throwback. Maybe instead of the blue helmet, do that with the stripes and make it black and white or something
Right.
like that. Do
Yes.
something different.
Do something different. And again, I'm kind of in a white stage, I guess, in my life. I enjoy like the white look. And I think that's just a clean, classy look. So I like the all white. I would love to see the Bears go all white.
Yeah. Milton Fan 15, what's more enjoyable to watch? BK losing at LSU or watching BK wait on the sideline to yell at his quarterback? For me, for my entertainment value, when they pan to him and seeing if he's going to blow up on somebody on the sideline, that's far more entertaining than just watching him lose.
I mean,
because he basically just starts biting his lip and, all that stuff at the end of the game when he's losing. And
true.
The entertainment value there is the press conference.
So. I mean, watching them lose is pretty darned entertaining because it's an entire game's worth of bad decisions and, regret. So I do enjoy that. But at this, I mean, I let's be honest, I enjoy both of those. So I'll go with losing just because it's like a 3-hour thing as opposed to a 30-second thing. But either one is very palatable to me right now.
Here's an interesting one. Chi-Town, if Notre Dame made it to a New Year's Six bowl, who would you like them to play?
Michigan. Plain and simple. I think Michigan has had a baby soft schedule so far this year.
They have.
And obviously I believe they have Penn State this week, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously that's going to change this week, although Penn State isn't exactly a world beater.
I was going to say Penn State basically, right. I mean, they played Purdue and they played Auburn.
True.
And that's it.
No, absolutely. So I would love to see Michigan. I would love to beat Michigan in a New Year's Six. So you check off a few things. The last time you played Michigan, you got curb stomped in a rainstorm, right? And so I would love to see them have some retribution for that. And then also you win your New Year's Six game at the same time. That would be a pretty sweet way to shove off into the offseason for me.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I think I'd probably take that as well. Like I was originally thinking, Kansas is ranked this year. I don't want to see that though. Like I don't. That would just be.
That would be hard though, wouldn't it?
It would. It would be very hard.
Yeah, that would be tough because it's the team that you want, your heart is with, and then you're covering Notre Dame. Obviously, you're a fan of Notre Dame as well, but that would be really hard.
Yeah, I would not want that. I think Kansas played here. It was a year or two before I moved here, and they were not good. It was like Eddie Robinson Classic or something like that. I don't know if you remember that.
That sounds familiar, but that would have been, if it's before you moved, it was before I was, following the team from a professional standpoint. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Sean Stewart, which running back will get to 100 all-purpose yards against Stanford? I'll say all of them.
I know, right?
I mean, Audric seems to be the guy. He's the hot hand right now.
Yeah.
I was doing a notebook from Tommy Reese's comments yesterday. He was talking about the running backs and stuff and, mixing them, matching them and all that kind of thing. In these last 3 games, it's a total of 6 running backs who have had 100 yards from scrimmage in those 3 games. And Audric Estime is the common denominator. He's gone over 100 yards from scrimmage all 3 times.
I mean, there you go.
To me, he's the most obvious, especially the way they use him, as the closer and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Absolutely. And you only need to break off one and then, a screen or, something along those lines. I mean, I don't think Logan Diggs is an option here. Not that I don't think he could do it. I just don't think he'll be first. Right. And so it's a toss up between Tyree and Estime, but I think Estime is going to get more touches. So I would go with Estime.
Yeah. I think if Diggs does it, like more than half of it is going to come catching the football.
Yeah.
And running the football.
Right.
Just again, based on, but who knows? Maybe it changes. He
could have been first. He could have been first last week if he doesn't drop that screen pass. Yeah. So, I mean, that was, he had room to go.
Yep. Ladarius, how do you all think Notre Dame will finish the month of October?
Undefeated. And it would be a huge disappointment if they don't. Huge.
Syracuse will be a test to close it out, but, good defense. I ultimately don't think I think Notre Dame is better than them though, and should, physically should be superior to them, even though they're playing well and they're still undefeated right now. But again, the Stanford team this week is not good. UNLV's got at least a decent record, but again, like Cal beat UNLV the week before Cal came to Notre Dame, and I think Notre Dame is better now than they were then. And so we're starting to see them ascend. So I think they'll close it out. I think they'll win these 3 games going into Clemson.
Right.
November 5th.
Yep, I agree. 6-2 Notre Dame team going into Clemson game. Yeah, I think
I'm not saying they're going to run over Syracuse. I think that could be a very competitive game. But
I didn't say that either. And I think playing in the dome up there is also very difficult. I mean, it's just weird playing in there. So that's going to be, a challenge in and of itself, right? But I still think that they're going to beat them. I think that they will be undefeated in the month of October.
Yeah. All right. Shannon, can you believe tomorrow is the 10-year anniversary of the 2012 overtime win in the goal line stand versus Stanford in the soaking rain? Were you guys there? Any specific memories of that day? I know I was there. I think you were there, right?
Well, you were there, and that was one that you brought somebody else instead of me. That was back when you and I were together, and we were kind of, whatever. There were a couple games where you'd be like, hey, I want to bring somebody. Because the only reason I remember that is because I was at McDonald's with my family, and I was watching the game on the TV in the play place at that time. Pouring rain. Yeah. Nobody was in the restaurant because nobody wanted to leave their house. So we were there, and I was like, I'm only going to some place where there's a TV, And so I remember watching it on the play place TV at the McDonald's in Granger, Indiana, and watching the goal line stand at that place. Why I remember that, I don't know. It's probably the only Notre Dame game I've ever watched from McDonald's, but I remember that one very, very, very well. So, and I was like cheering and going crazy, and my kids were what? Dylan, I think, was 5. The twins were very small, and I think Chloe was a baby. So, yeah.
Hang on just a second. I'm going to see if I can find something that I saw on Twitter this afternoon. I didn't realize the 10-year anniversary. Yeah, I knew it was 10 years. I didn't know it was tomorrow, though.
Yeah, me neither.
But that must be why David Shaw was asked about it this week. So David Shaw, here's what he had to say when he was asked about that game this week on if Stephen Taylor actually scored a touchdown against the Irish in overtime in 2012. Taylor, of course, the running back on that play on the goal line standing. So here's what David Shaw had to say, quote, "The first time, absolutely. The rules have changed since then. There's more of a mandate to review everything goal line play. He was in. I believe it was first down. He was in on first down. It did not get reviewed. The other rule change is crews working together. That was a mixed crew. The people in the box weren't used to working with the people on the field. There was a lack of communication there. The statute of limitations of past where I feel like I can speak freely about this. I feel like I've had multiple conversations with multiple people over the years. Some people I haven't sought out. They sought me out, including some of the guys who were working in the truck, working in the van during that look at those. They insisted. I didn't even push. They insisted that Stephen was in."
Wow.
Quote.
Bitter, so, 10 years later. But I guess it is what it is. And
again, it's like he may have eventually crossed the goal line, which he did. He eventually crossed the goal line, but his knee was down at one point, and there was a whistle blowing at one point. And like none of the,
and the reason there was a mixed crew is because it was Pac-12 officials on the field.
Right.
I mean, they're your officials, dude. Don't complain about your officials.
That's exactly
and
right.
I don't care what.
And he didn't, but he doesn't mention that. He doesn't mention they were Pac-12 officials.
Of course not. It's a mixed crew. It doesn't matter what conference you're in to get a buzz from upstairs or what. Like that means nothing. You know what? I hope they beat them even worse now.
They reviewed that play. They said it was. I mean, that's the biggest thing to me is they reviewed that play and they kept going. And of course, Stanford was ticked off afterwards. And you get the whole conspiracy theories of you go to Notre Dame and you're going to get screwed by officials, even though again they're not Notre Dame officials. They come from conferences,
right?
And typically it is
the visitors,
an officiating crew of the visitors that works the games. And like. You go back, I remember when Tyrone Willingham was here and there was a Pittsburgh touchdown. And, it's like calls go against Notre Dame here too. It's not a one-way street. There have been
Right.
plenty that have gone against Notre Dame that just make you scratch your head as well.
Absolutely. No question. I mean,
But that's what I remember. I mean, that's obviously the thing that stands out is all the controversy over that. And like Stanford still complains about that the way Purdue women's basketball still thinks they didn't foul Ruth Riley at the end of the national championship game. And, Ruth, of course, hit the 2 free throws to win the championship. It's the same thing. It's just sour grapes. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I hate to say it, but you're right.
Okay. Oh, salty. Which kind of coach has gotten the best out of you, and which do you prefer? Calm and reflective or hot and steamy?
It's a good question because I feel like I've coached longer than I was an actual player. And I was never a great player, except for I was decent at baseball, but like
Right.
basketball, not so much. Football, I was there. I could block, that kind of thing. I was just an average high school football player. I got looks because of my academics, not because of my athletics. I had both for sure. I probably liked somebody in the middle. I had a coach who just chewed my ass all the time, and I hated him with a passion.
Right.
But then when I became a coach, looking back, he was probably the best coach I ever had. So in retrospect, I probably identify a little bit more with the brimstone type coach. I don't know that I appreciated it at the time. So I guess that's my answer. I don't know if that's a good answer or not.
No, that's exactly how I feel about, like my best coaches. I'm a little bit shorter than you, so like I played baseball, I played football, and I wrestled. I didn't play basketball. And of the 3, wrestling was my best sport. Went to state a couple times, had a chance. I could have gone,
Awesome.
To a junior college. I had a couple junior college opportunities before I ultimately decided to go in the Army. But we had the wrestling coach we had my freshman and sophomore year. And like even before that, like our club coach growing up, they were the more intense kind of guys, and not necessarily yellers and screamers, but like especially the high school coach, man, he just had a way of getting under your skin and just kind of like, making you, kind of giving you that look like, are you freaking kidding me? Is that the best you've got? And just like, and it's like, yeah, you think that's the best I got? I'll show you the best. It's just like antagonizing you enough and making sure that he was going to stay under your skin enough that he was going to tick you off. And that kind of was what ended up getting the best out of me and really kind of missed that my last couple of years, so, again, not necessarily the yeller, but, also kind of to your point, at the time I hated his guts. It's like, I remember we were going to a tournament like on a Saturday morning and it's Friday night and he's still grinding us, running wind sprints at the end. And it's like, my freaking feet are killing me. We've got a tournament tomorrow. Can we just end this practice right now? That kind of stuff. And it's just, so I would definitely say the intense guy. And, again, did not appreciate him in the moment, but when you look back a few years later after the fact, that was definitely the guy that I appreciated the most. I was 138 at the end of high school. That was my weight class. I was at 132 the first couple years.
I don't think those are even classes anymore. Those don't sound familiar to me.
I don't know. They've all changed since, and this was in Kansas too. And I don't know if it's across the board, like across the country with all the weight classes and stuff like that. But they've definitely changed the weight classes.
Well, I know they've adjusted the ones in Indiana like recently, so they definitely upped them recently. But because I think not even that long ago, I think the smallest guys were under 100 pounds, and I think that is not the case anymore. I think they're over 100. But
yeah, because I'm trying to remember if our lowest weight class was either 105 or 98. I can't remember. It's been so long. And again, like growing up doing the club stuff as well, there were so many different weight classes there.
That's
and
true.
I can't remember what the lowest one was back then. Yeah, but I think it went 126, 132, 138, then 145, 155, 167, and then maybe like 185.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Since this is the Sean show at the present, here's another good one. Oh, no, not that one. Hold on. There we go.
I was a specialist. I could have gone to the NCO school, but I told him I didn't want to. I said, I'm in this for 4 years. I'm getting out. I'm not gonna go back to school and deal with drill sergeants and all that kind of stuff.
That's fair.
A lot of my a lot of my friends, they wanted the extra pay, so they took it. They went away for a month or whatever it was, 6 weeks, and did all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so spec 4. I did my 4 and got out. That was it.
That's fair. I mean, hey, it's 4 more than I ever did, so you still have my respect. We were talking about coaches that we would play for, so I'm going to pull this one up just because it is apropos to what we're talking about from Anthony. He says, Sean and Vince, would you play for Coach Knight, or would you have avoided him because of his demanding attitude?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Well, let me answer it this way. Again, I was a terrible basketball player, so I would have never thought about playing for Coach Knight. Okay,
so like if we're saying that's
right.
I wasn't a great basketball player by any means either, which is ironic because my sister, went on and played in the WNBA.
True. As a parent, I would love for my son to play for Bobby Knight, specifically Bobby Knight, because he graduated his players. He was demanding. They were successful. I never really had. Of course, I hated Bobby Knight because I don't like IU, but I respected Bobby Knight for sure. I would not have a problem with my son playing for a guy like Bobby Knight. Because again, the yelling and the screaming and the thises and the that's. I mean, you have to be intelligent enough. You have to be mature enough to be able to kind of look past some of that and listen to the words, that kind of thing. I think my son can do that. And I like the demanding nature of his coaching style. So personally, I would want my son to play for him.
It's funny because my initial reaction was I probably wouldn't, just because like the stuff at the end when he was, obviously choking a player, grabbing a player by the throat and those kind of things, that's different. But I do remember actually, like in '87 when they played for the national championship, like having a conversation with my mom, and like she, just thought Bobby Knight was the Antichrist, and I thought that he was pretty cool. So I think that is, especially like back then, and again, having some demanding coaches growing up, I probably wouldn't have minded that.
Right.
I might not have always, just like all of his players, I might not have liked some of the stuff that you were getting, but I do remember, kind of being like, I don't mind Bobby Knight, back then.
Right. So. I mean, I do respect his coaching, and he was also a philanthropist, and he's donating a bunch of money back to the school, and so I do respect all of that. He donated to the library, as opposed to a certain coach at LSU who donated to the football program, which makes no sense, but whatever.
Yep. All right. So we went down that route with all of the with all the coaching styles. This is, man, you're going to make us think here, Milton. Best and worst Notre Dame offensive defensive coordinators the last 20 years.
20 years. So that gets us back to 2002.
Here's what's hard about the offensive coordinators. Weiss and Kelly, for the most part, like until the later, the last 5 years of Kelly's career, basically, I mean, and like pretty much the whole tenure of Charlie Weiss, whether he was officially calling plays or not, like those were the guys calling the shot on offense, and the offensive coordinators were just kind of like puppets or whatever. Yeah, so that's tough. Defensive coordinator, I think that I would go with Clark Lee myself.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't like about Clark Lee was he wasn't a very good recruiter.
I know you don't like the recruiting, but like if we're just talking X and O,
because if he was strategist, he'd be in trouble because there's no depth at linebacker, and his defense would have suffered.
It's fair.
You know what I mean? So that is the only part that would make me not say him. Who was his predecessor that went to A&M?
Mike Elko.
I might
only here for a year.
Yeah, I know. But I did like what he was doing. And to be honest with you, what's his name? Who went and crashed and burned at UConn? Bob Diaco.
Yeah, Bob Diaco was pretty good when he was here.
I will go with Bob Diaco. I think his defenses were pretty darn good when he was here. I think
the old one-man wolf pack.
He hit his ceiling as a coordinator. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
But I would put him as my coordinator, and I would bring Charlie Weiss in as my offensive coordinator.
And that's what's crazy. Yeah. I mean, like I would probably just call Charlie Weiss the offensive coordinator and go with him myself. Like, if you're going to go that route.
Yeah.
That's good. It's weird how, though, Bob Diaco got to UConn and that whole train wreck happened there. And then he was just not a good defensive coach anywhere he went after that.
No, he wasn't. And he had a ton of success. I mean, he was the assistant coach of the year. I mean, he did all these great things at Notre Dame. And then after that, it was.
Jeff wants to know, how confident are you Notre Dame brings their A game Saturday and steamrolls Stanford like they should? Hopefully we don't see a repeat of their attitude/effort against Marshall.
I think it benefits Notre Dame that it is a night game. I think that they will be artificially up just because of that situation. Normally, I would say I'm not very confident because maybe it's BK PTSD, maybe it's the Marshall game, maybe it's all of those things put together. But Notre Dame tends to play down to their opponent. And we have yet to see a Notre Dame team come out and just stomp a team like they should, frankly. And they should stomp this team. And so my confidence level isn't super high. It's higher because it's a night game with the light show and all of that fun stuff. And I think the players really dig that and they feed off of it. But it's not super high. If we're going like 1 to 10, it's like a 6.
Here's what's weird about this Notre Dame team so far this season. And Marcus Freeman kind of made reference to it a little bit. I think it was last week, about the fact that, like, they've played their best football so far away from Notre Dame Stadium.
That's
played a really competitive game against Ohio State. They, even though they obviously lost, but then they go out to North Carolina, played a really good game there, go to Las Vegas, played a really good game there. And now, obviously, there have been some different factors that have contributed to it. You've got a different quarterback, you've had an evolving offensive line, all those different things. But Marshall and Cal in back-to-back games have been pretty stinky, you know? And
even in
the thing that he was talking about is, like, away games, you have fewer distractions. That's true. What he said. When you had, and I know, I took some heat for this when I said it, but, like, bringing back the, going to mass on that was like, I'm not. All I'm saying is it was one less thing, and I even had a couple other people, bring it up to me. It was one less thing that you had to do on game day, and that's what I'm talking about. It's like basically a 2-hour commitment between getting the team to mass, the mass itself, and then the walk from the Basilica, over to the stadium. That's a big 2-hour chunk of time, and it's one less thing that you have to do. That's why I didn't, mind one way or the other. But it is a thing. There's a lot of things, like you go back to Bob Davie. He used to bitch out loud about going to the pep rallies and all that stuff.
Yes, he did.
On Friday, and the luncheons, and all those different things. And there are just a lot of things that surround a home game. So I do hope that they can come out focused and not be sloppy. I'll probably be kind of in that same boat. I'm kind of in the middle. This is a team that they should beat handily, but are they capable of doing, because, like, look at the fall starts and stuff like that. You had more of the fall starts in those 2 home games than you did in the road games.
That's true. And if this is a 2:30 game, I'd be at like a 4. You know what I mean? Out of 10. I just don't have, my confidence level is low. It just is. And it goes up 2 points because it's a night game. But then I, like, devil's advocate myself, and I'm thinking to myself, well, now you got all day to sit around and think about the game too, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So I know as a player and a coach, I hated night games because it's just, you sit around all day long just anticipating, and it takes forever to get there. I mean, it's very similar to, like, Friday night football, for example, for high school. You play a game at 7:00, but as a coach, generally, you're a teacher. You got to go through the whole day teaching, and you got to do everything, and then you sit around for a little while, and then you start doing your pregame. It takes forever. It's the longest. Like Fridays were the longest days in history. I hated it. So night games are a struggle, man. I don't like having the whole day to sit around and think, man. Give me a noon game all day long. I love it. Get up, get right at it, and then it's time to roll, So that's my opinion.
Yep, I agree. All right, let me see which question we can go to next. Salty. Fill in the blank. It's blank that the LSU sites have started talking about their baseball team.
Fantastic. It's fantastic and predictable. Predictable because they were so high on Brian Kelly and they thought we were just sour grapes about losing Brian Kelly. And, you can obviously go see Brian's cameos on the different LSU shows, but they're getting what they asked for at this point. And it's going to be very interesting to see how things progress over the next few years, because the next stretch of games this first year are going to be really bad. And there's going to be all kinds of excuses made. It's his first year, blah, 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 blah. He needs to develop that championship, preparation and all these different things, but he's not coaching at a championship level. So yeah. I hope LSU enjoys having BK.
I concur. I think it's hilarious that they're already talking about baseball, but they take that baseball seriously down there too.
That's the other thing you have to remember. This isn't Notre Dame baseball. Look, we love baseball. You and I love baseball. We love talking about Notre Dame baseball when they went to the College World Series this past year. No doubt about it. It can't hold a candle to what LSU baseball is as far as the pomp and circumstance and the competition and the excitement level around that.
Because I've said this before, even though obviously the stadium is not as big and all of that, it is LSU baseball. They do pack Alex Box Stadium down there, night in and night out. And the beat for LSU baseball is on par. Basically it's the same beat that they've got for football. It's every bit as big.
Yes.
There's a huge media contingent that follows it, and it is demanding down there. It aged my guy Paul Maneri quite a bit.
Sure. And there's a reason that he holds Notre Dame in such high regard, because it was just different.
Yeah.
It was just different, and your success is celebrated so much more because it's expected down there. It's awesome when it's up here. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's a great
point. Just getting to the College World Series is nothing down there. That's the minimal expectation going into every season.
Yeah, he was able to enjoy and celebrate, what he accomplished up here, and it was expected down there.
Right.
So, and I'm sure that there's people out there that think his one national championship, is that what he ended up with?
Yep.
It wasn't enough.
Right.
Even though he went to the College World Series multiple times, but one wasn't enough. So, and that's a shame because he's an amazing coach and man.
Anthony asked, who has most wins in their first 12 games, the football team or the baseball team? I wouldn't be surprised if the baseball team goes 12-0. So
I was going to say that's easy. And generally those early games in the season, they're not playing world beaters either. So.
And they're playing them at home.
They're playing them at home because they're down there in Louisiana.
Yep.
So it's not like Notre Dame, who's making a Florida trip and a Texas trip and, all these other things.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, Ladarius is right. LSU baseball, like Alabama softball, College World Series is the expectation.
No doubt.
That's right. Well, Patrick Murphy down there kicking it with Alabama softball. They big power for a long time. I know that.
Yeah. Oklahoma's a big one too, right?
Recently, yeah. Killing it. All right, well, let's transition, if you will. Are you ready for rapid fire?
I will.
Let's do it. Some great questions tonight, but let's hit some rapid fire questions tonight too. And of course, if we missed anything that was pressing for you tonight, you can also always hit us up with it on tomorrow's show. We'll have plenty on tomorrow's show as well. So Tobias Merriweather, we talked about a little bit about him earlier. He saw the field again Saturday night, but he didn't have a catch. Here's my question for you.
Oh boy.
Which number at the end of the season is going to be greater? Tobias Merriweather's total receptions or Chris Tyree's total touchdowns?
So I meant to look this up. I'm guessing Chris Tyree does not have a touchdown yet. I can't remember him
Two.
getting
He
in
has
the
two.
He
One
has two.
rushing, one receiving. Yep. So he's got a 2-0 lead, but that's not
Does.
much, if a receiver gets a couple catches.
That's a series potentially, right? I mean, I'll be Mr. Optimistic and I'll say Tobias Merriweather's total receptions, but I will also say that I'm not super confident that that is going to be the answer when it's all said and done. But the way the last couple of games have gone, the way I think this game is going to go, I feel like he's going to get his hands on the ball over the next few games. And I think he does take the lead, and I think he'll keep it for the rest of the season, unless Chris Tyree just goes bonkers, but I don't see that happening either.
Right. It's bound to start happening.
Right.
If he sees the field more, he's going to start picking up a catch here, a catch there. And there are we're 5 games into the season now. So that's 7 games remaining of the regular season and a bowl game, 8. Right there, if he can just average 1 per game, that's 8. So I think he's got an opportunity to have around 10. Now he's got to get targeted at some point first, but just the fact that he's seeing the field is at least promising. Yeah. I don't think Tyree probably ends up with 10 or 11 touchdowns, so I'll say Merriweather gets his number is going to be greater as well.
I like it. I'm with you.
Another question about receivers for you here.
Okay.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Jason Garrett said during the Notre Dame BYU broadcast Saturday that Lorenzo Styles is basically a possession receiver right now.
It's understandable that he would say that because I don't know that Jason Garrett really studies Notre Dame as well as he probably should. And I guess that's a knock on Jason Garrett, but it's also what he sees on Saturdays. And if you're just going by what you see on Saturday, you can easily make that assumption or that opinion. And I get it. That's not who he should be. That is not who he should be, but it is kind of who he is at the moment. And so it's understandable that he would say that, but I don't think that over the course of his career that you would say that once it's all said and done.
Yeah. And it remains, after the other night, it remains just 4 different Notre Dame receivers who have a catch. And I know Brian's given us a hard time about Tobias Merriweather, but the guy's talented and the receiving core has not produced so far. 4 receivers have receptions so far. Styles is averaging 13.7 per catch. Braden Lindsey, 9.8 per catch. Jaden Thomas is the leader, 17.7 per catch. Matt Salerno, 14 per catch. So really, with the exception of Thomas, when you look at the yards per catch and going into that game, you would have said he was in the same boat. I mean, they're not throwing deep, like there's one deep pass that we have seen, catch by Lorenzo Styles, the post that we didn't get to see on TV against North Carolina, and the Jaden Thomas 30-yard touchdown last week. So until they start stretching the field, everyone is working as a possession receiver right
I'm saying
now.
They haven't used the wide receivers at all.
Yeah, that's not the skill set of most of these guys. But when you look at the production and the yards per catch that they have right now, it's right. They've got to start stretching the field. And especially, I like these game plans and, go back a few weeks back. I can't remember exactly when Marcus Freeman, I think it might've been after Cal. He was asked about the game plan and he's like, this is going to be a week to week thing. Like you're going to see different game plans. And we have seen distinctly different game plans week to week. They know that the receivers are part of the passing game, even though they really weren't against BYU the other night. But at some point, that has to tell me that more of those Jaden Thomas type opportunities are going to start coming because defenses are sitting down, looking for that short stuff and, in the flats and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They if anybody's going to be anything but a possession receiver, they need to start throwing to the wide receivers more often. Drew Pine, that's the next step that I need to see from Drew Pine, right? If we're talking about progression and we're talking about getting better, the next progression for Drew Pine is to find his open receivers and hit those guys and not stay locked in on Michael Mayer.
Yeah. Okay. Notre Dame is favored by 16.5 over Stanford Saturday. Purdue's a 13.5 point favorite to beat Nebraska, and Texas is a 16.5 point favorite to beat Iowa State. So which of those 3 double-digit underdogs do you like best against the spread Saturday?
It's a toss-up for me between Iowa State and Stanford. And the only reason I say Stanford is because we've talked about this. I'm not going to rehash it, that Notre Dame hasn't really put teams away, and we're talking about more than a 2-touchdown spread, and they should win by that much. I just don't know that they will. And since I'm pretty intimately familiar with Notre Dame and what they have and have not done, I'm going to go with Stanford on this one. And I'm going to take Stanford and the points on this particular question.
See, we are not Marshall. Misunderstood the question. The question is not who covers the spread. The question is which of the underdogs covers the spread. And Iowa State, Stanford, and Nebraska are the three underdogs in this scenario. So it's one of those three. Which of those three has the best chance? And Shannon and John have the correct answer in my book. I think it's Iowa State because they're now this is the best chance, and I can see what you're saying with Stanford. You're worried about, the Notre Dame factor and all that different stuff. I get it. Again, Iowa State's a little bit like the actual Iowa. The two Iowa teams are fairly similar this year. Their offense isn't as bad as Iowa's, but, it's not great, but they also don't give up a lot of points. Like I mentioned earlier, they lost a 10-9 game to Kansas State last week. And the week before that, they lost a 14-11 game to Kansas, So at the very least, very Iowa-like, they know how to keep the points down. And, Texas, got a little swagger. They're on a little bit of a roll. They beat West Virginia a couple of weeks ago. And then, of course, they just put the hammer down on Oklahoma with 49 points last week. But this is a letdown opportunity for Texas because you're just coming off Red River, won 49-0 against Oklahoma. Next week, they've got Oklahoma State. And so right in the middle.
It's a trap game.
Trap game, Iowa State.
Trap game.
That's right. So it's a classic letdown. I like the Cyclones to keep this close. And really, I kind of wonder about that Purdue-Nebraska game as well because Purdue's got some momentum going, 3 straight wins and all that. But they've played 4 one-possession games this season. And, the win for Purdue, they beat Minnesota by 10 points. So, they've played a lot of really close games this year. Don't really fully know what to make of Nebraska, but they've scored at least 28 points 4 different times themselves. So I think that maybe that game is a little bit closer. Like putting a lot on Purdue to win a double-digit spread game. I don't know if I'd be comfortable with that one really either. All right. I was just looking over here to see if anyone was chiming in with anything. Yeah, Tyler Evans, he thought Purdue as well. Yeah. Okay, so Vince, I want you to help me figure this out.
I'll try.
You and I were texting about this. I was telling Brian about this earlier. So this reporter from the Lawrence Journal-World tweeted yesterday that Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels is expected to miss the rest of the season with a grade 3 separation of his right shoulder, his throwing shoulder. Injured it in the loss to TCU in the first half.
Similar injury to
Tyler Buchner. Right. Not so fast, my friend, because Jalen Daniels, the actual quarterback, sees this tweet and he quote tweets, "Sheesh, that's news to me." So you've got the quarterback, you've got the reporter saying he's going to be out the rest of the season. You've got the quarterback saying, not so fast, my friend. And then, so this was yesterday. Last night, Kansas head coach Lance Leopold tweets 2 pictures of Daniels. And in one of them, he's like flexing his muscles, and the other one, he's raising his arms above his head. So like if he's doing this stuff, how bad is the shoulder? Right? So you've got the reporter saying it's season ending. And so then in an ESPN article, Leopold is quoted saying Jalen did not practice today, would probably be put in the doubtful area. Again, looking at it day to day, but hasn't done anything yet. And that's probably the extent I will comment at this time. What do you think I should make of all this as a Kansas alum?
First of all, based on what we have to do as media at Notre Dame in order to report anything, you got to get permission. You don't have to, but it's understood, especially for injuries. And you got this rogue guy saying he's out for the season. And then the way Kansas handles it is the kids tweeting about it. Like, I think it's hilarious, frankly, that he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. News to me. I think that is priceless. That is hilarious. Why would you not get confirmation from the sports information department before you go saying that a kid is done for the year? It's pathetic.
Well, and that's, like Brian and I were having conversations about, injuries and reporting of injuries. And obviously, every place is a little bit different with how they want to handle that, especially in college. But this guy said he had his sources, and then, like I just put the thing up there. We Are Not Marshall said both of those pictures are photoshopped. It's like, on the one hand, what are especially college football coaches notorious for?
Lying.
Smoke screening. And yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Lying about the extent of injuries. Right. So how much stock I can put in what, Lance Leopold is saying about this and, what everyone else is saying. At the very least, he wasn't wearing a sling. You would think that if his shoulder was that bad, he would have been a sling and he would not be holding it up over his arm.
Right.
Could they be Photoshopped? I suppose that's a lot of work to do for a football coach, though, to Photoshop pictures of the quarterback.
I will bet you even money that the guy doesn't even understand how to do Photoshop.
No.
But I'm sure he has a staff of people that can.
I'm just hoping maybe within a month he's back. In the meantime, they got a pretty good backup quarterback, that played well in the second half against TCU. I'm hoping they can ride that for a little bit, because I think it was Salty asking earlier, and we didn't get to the question, who's going to have the better season, Kansas football or Kansas basketball? I got to go with Kansas basketball because it's Kansas basketball and they just won a national championship. And
true.
The schedule's getting tougher now for football. They won they opened some eyes with some nice non-conference wins. They played a close game against TCU. Couple mistakes kind of buried them in the end, but it's getting closer. And Vigo wants to know if I bet on horse racing like Kramer. I do not. They're all talking about my gambling here. And Shannon says that
a non-Notre Dame question.
Oh, there was another Shannon question. I'll get to that one here.
Oh, okay.
In a minute. Where was oh, yeah. I have a feeling Sean has Iowa State in a parlay this weekend, is what Shannon said. And I could be working on one right now. I could be. It's tough, man, because like you were saying last week, I went out on some underdogs and it didn't pay off.
Yeah.
But those spreads were closer too. I like these wide spreads like this.
Yeah. You can have some fun with those.
So what's more likely to happen in the next 20 years, Vince? Cubs win another World Series or the Bears return to glory and win the Super Bowl?
I have way more faith in and this is saying a lot over the last year or so, but I have a lot more faith in the management of the Cubs than I do of the management of the Bears.
Slightly.
Yes, and I realize that's not setting the bar very high, but the last time the Bears won the Super Bowl, I was 4, and the last time the Cubs won the World Series was 35. So, I mean, there's a big difference there, and I do feel like the Cubs have a better shot than the Bears do.
I think so too, because you look at, 20 years is a long time. The cycles, things change every 3 to 5 years. But when you look at really how competitive the Bears have been compared to how competitive the Cubs have been,
it's like they backed into that Super Bowl that they played in.
Yeah. I think that I'd have to put mine on the Cubs as well.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think part of that has to do with the division. There's a lot of scenarios and things that go into it, but yeah, I just have way more faith in the Cubs than I do the Bears.
Yeah. All right. The Pac-12's trying to negotiate a new TV contract, and you've got outlets like ESPN, TNT, streamers like Apple and Amazon, all reportedly interested at different levels with the Pac-12. So if you're the Pac-12, how much do you prioritize just getting the biggest paycheck versus potential, exposure or lack of exposure that you would get with, this kind of mixed bag of outlets involved?
I would try to get as many outlets involved as possible, to be honest with you, because you just don't know what the future holds with streaming and everything. I mean, it does feel like things are pointing in that direction, but they need exposure right now because I think it just feels like it's going to be the Pac-12 or the Big 12. I don't know that it's going to be both moving forward.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Pac-12 is kind of on the outside looking in when it comes to exposure because all the games are on so freaking late, right? And so they're going to have to get some better exposure if they expect to last. And I don't know, I don't know what the future holds for both of those conferences, but I feel like they're going to feed off of each other and maybe combine into one. And so they're going to need as much exposure as they can get.
And I really, there was talk about that merger and all that stuff. I really do think whether it's a merger, like they would be pretty well suited to play a lot of games against each other,
Sure.
with different exposure, non-conference games and stuff like that. But, Vigo was saying college football is dead on most of the West Coast. And it's not a lie, especially when you've got the two teams leaving UCLA.
From a recruiting standpoint, I don't think it's dead. I mean, you could say that it is down based on because most of those Pac-12 teams recruit the West Coast and they're down. And so I see where Vigo is coming from, but I wouldn't say dead. I think that's a bit hyperbolic.
I think if you're the Pac-12, it's a must to have ESPN, for the exposure side of things. Because of what you were, the recruiting aspect, you've got to have games on outlets that people are, because even if it's ESPN, like the Big 12 right now, for example, they have some games that end up on ESPN, so they've got a contract with them, but they also like ESPN Plus is still a big thing, because like my dad lives in Kansas and, all the time I hear about, ESPN Plus and, they've got to watch these games on ESPN Plus and stuff like that. So that's a part, it's tougher for the older crowd, but even like for the younger crowd, ESPN Plus, that's not a big deal. At least you've got access and the games are on some ESPN outlet. Like if ESPN Plus is part of the deal, which it would be if you've got a ESPN contract. And then the streamers, I'm sure, would pay a lot of money, but I just don't think it's in your best interest to make that your main package, whether it's Apple or Amazon or whatever. Because again, you've got to have games on actual TV. Because just think about the other day when we were off and we're watching games all day. Saturday, the biggest downside to the streaming thing, like the Bears are on TV tomorrow night, the Thursday night game. It's on Amazon, right? We only have one TV in our house that we can watch Amazon. So if you want to watch Amazon, it's got to be on that channel, and you also can't flip around watch other stuff, and that's, to be quite honest, especially if it's like a Saturday or Sunday, I'm flipping around all the time. As soon as a commercial comes on, I'm seeing what's going on in the other game.
You've always been a surfer, man. You are. That's always been you, man.
I'm a professional surfer.
You are. You really are. It's impressive, actually.
All right. We talked about Justin Tucker, the Baltimore Ravens kicker, earlier this week. He kicks field goals so well. That's right. He kicks field goals so well. If the uprights were only a half yard wide, he would still make a high percentage of his kicks. He has the best rate of right down the middle kicks of any kicker in the NFL. So here's my question to you. Buy or sell the idea of putting an extra upright bar in the middle of the goalposts, and if the kicker hits that bar with the ball, you get 4 points instead of 3.
Let me ask you a question before I answer this.
Okay.
Is this a Sean Stiers original, or did you see this from somewhere?
Completely me. Because I saw there were these, and I've got a screenshot of the whole, his accuracy and right down the middle and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, if he's right down the middle and he can kick it through a half yard, set of uprights in the middle, what if you just put one more bar right in the middle and you've got your 4-point bar there?
I freaking love it. I will say that. I freaking love it. I mean, first of all, I have a penchant for kickers. That is obvious. But at the same time, basketball, you get more points if you're shooting from further away.
3-pointer, right?
You should be awarded if you're kicking it right down the middle.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. I really do.
And I wonder, because, like when you think it, like, I don't know if you've ever like been out at the range shooting and stuff like that. It's like
Sure.
the narrower, like the smaller you focus on, like if, like, for example, look at your computer screen, right? Well, if I'm like 50 yards away and all I'm doing is going, oh, I'm going to try to hit that screen, maybe you hit it somewhere, but you might also spray it off, and not hit the screen at all. But if you aim dead center, you've got a better chance of hitting the
Right,
screen someplace. Just like with the field, like, so I wonder, like, if you've got this bar in the middle and kickers were, focusing actually on the middle,
right.
if maybe the accuracy of some of these guys starts improving.
Well, and Antoine says, ain't nobody going to go for 4 points when they can barely get 3. It's not going for 4. It says you get 4 if
Right.
you go right down the middle. You're
Right.
not
You
going
still, like, if it still goes through the main
Right.
uprights, you get 3
Yeah.
points. But
Right.
if it hits that middle bar, you get 4.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's a great incentive to kick it right down the middle. And I'm going to push back on We Are Not Marshall right here. He's like, I would like Groupie to focus on PAT. He hasn't graduated to field goals yet. He's missed 1. He's missed 1 field goal. Am I wrong? He hasn't missed a PAT.
I think you're right.
Why are we banging on the kid? Why are we banging on Groupie? He's missed 1 field goal all season.
Salty's on board. He says 4-pointer would be dope. Alan says, what would happen?
Oh, it's good.
If he hits the pole and it comes back out? Well, it's going to come back out most likely if you hit the pole.
Yeah,
but the whole thing is like you put like some kind of sensor on the pole so you know for sure that it hit the pole. And if you hit the pole, it's just 4 points. Whether it comes back out or not.
It doesn't matter because that would have gone. It has to go in between the big ones.
Right.
And if it hits the one in the middle and comes back out, it's obviously going between the middle ones. So that's a 4-pointer.
Yeah.
It's a huge I'm telling you, man, that would change strategy. That would be awesome.
I've got to, I guess I've got to pursue this now. I've got to start, sending this up the right flagpoles.
I'm telling you, I'm with you.
Kickers unite. I need to write Justin Tucker, and
Yes.
maybe Justin Tucker can push this incentive, right?
Yes, the $20 million man. He can do it for you.
There you go. All right. We've got a couple NFL questions, and we actually I want to make sure that I get this from Tyler because he sent in a super chat a while ago, and we've been kind of sitting on it. During the Chiefs-Raiders game, we saw Mahomes lined up in the shotgun, Kelsey went in motion, lined up as the quarterback, and snapped the ball. Someone tell Reese to use this play with baby Gronk.
Michael Mayer is a very good tight end. They tried him on the old end around, before. He's not exactly fleet of foot. All right. That is the only place where the kid from Georgia is better than Michael Mayer.
Right.
Okay. I still think Michael Mayer is a better tight end overall, but the Bowers kid is faster. And frankly, I would almost imagine that Travis Kelce is faster as well. So
yeah, that's one thing that's because like I was watching Kelce the other night and thinking about, just watching Michael Mayer, obviously, a couple nights before. Kelce, even though he's obviously big, he does have more quick twitch to him than Michael Mayer has.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. So, yeah, I don't know that I would subscribe to that. Now, I would subscribe to some other things and moving guys around and things of that nature, but not putting Michael Mayer behind center. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, fill in the blank. It's blank that Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams has now been formally charged with misdemeanor assault for shoving the cameraman after the Raiders lost to the Chiefs Monday night.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely – the guy's 28 years old. He steps in front of a train, essentially. Like, first of all, what are you doing? Okay. He got a minor concussion, and he says he got whiplash.
Says he's got whiplash. Right.
Come on, dude. You got whiplash?
This is like, you're sitting at the stoplight and the guy taps your bumper with his car and it's like, oh, I've got whiplash.
He comes in with the big neck brace, the whole thing. I mean, this kid's whoever this guy's attorney is a freaking ambulance chaser. It's ridiculous. I realize he's probably going to settle out of court and the guy's going to have a payday.
Well, see, that's the thing now is like, this is just like regular court. What happens when he takes it to civil and he decides to sue him, because that's what he's doing with this whiplash BS. Is he's going to try to claim pain and suffering down the line and,
so stupid.
All that kind of stuff.
I just can't stand people that do this. I can't stand it. And I realize he's trying to get a payday and he wants money and all of that, but it's just stupid. Stupid.
Yeah, we were talking about it yesterday. And again, like, did Davante Adams, did he go too far with the shove? Yeah.
Sure.
But the guy was also an idiot. Like they showed the video and the guy decides there's two Raiders players coming to the tunnel and he decides he needs to run across that space while they're right there. And that's how Adams runs into him. It's like, come on, man.
What are you doing?
The fact that he's filed charges and he's setting the whole thing up to try to get the payday down the line.
So stupid.
Yes. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for tonight. A lot of spirit, as always, on Mailbag Night, which we appreciate.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We appreciate
it. I'm intrigued about this live Saturday show. This is the first that I've heard about it. So.
I have been texting Brian, and so I do know what the surprise is. And so I will let you know once we sign off. Sorry, everybody, but it is a surprise.
All right.
And you're just going to have to wait until actually, I mean, the goal is to have as many people on campus live as possible. So people need to head out to campus and they need to check it out. And I promise you, you will not be disappointed. How about that? You will not be disappointed.
Antoine knows where it's at. His neck and his back. That's right. All right. So you won't be disappointed.
Yep.
Live show coming up.
So whoever the poster was that was looking for where the live show was, it's going to be around the dome at some point. And you'll have to follow Brian on Twitter or join the message board to get more details. But it will be worth your time, and it will be a memorable moment for you and your son.
Yeah, and I think the guy, Alan just brought this up, the protester in the Rams game, Bobby Douglas, tackled last week. I think he's trying to say that he has a minor concussion or something too. So
how many concussions you and I have?
Great, don't run on a football field and you won't get a concussion.
Exactly.
It's like, man, don't run in front of professional football players and you won't get concussed and whiplash.
Gosh, it's just so typical. It's just so typical and so sad.
Yeah. All right. We will talk to you tomorrow night. We will be here once again. As always, great stuff. Appreciate all the questions tonight. We'll talk to you then. IB Nation Sports Talk.